She said it slowly, like she wanted the words to settle into my bones. You'll never recover from this. Not financially, not socially, not emotionally. We were standing in the driveway the day the divorce papers were finalized. Her car was already packed. Mine wasn't. I remember nodding, not arguing, not defending myself. 6 months later, she called. Her voice was softer. She said she needed to meet. Stay with me, because what happened in those 6 months wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, and the quiet is what changed everything. The day the divorce became official, I didn't feel angry. I felt erased. Her name is Lillian Harper. Mine is Daniel Brooks. We were married 11 years, no kids, a downtown condo, shared friends, shared routines, shared language. When the judge signed the final order, she didn't look at me. She gathered her folder, adjusted her coat, and walked past without touching my arm. Outside, in the courthouse parking lot, she stopped long enough to deliver her final verdict. "You don't understand how much I carried," she said. "You'll see. You won't recover from this." There was no yelling, no scene, just certainty. Lillian worked in corporate communications. She knew how to frame a narrative. During the divorce, she had framed me carefully. Not abusive, not cruel, just unstable, inconsistent, lost. She used that word often. "He's just lost right now," she told mutual friends. "I hope he finds himself." It sounded compassionate. It wasn't. By the time we signed papers, 3 couples we used to see every month had stopped inviting me. My phone went quiet. Even my sister asked if I was okay mentally. I started questioning my own tone in conversations. Was I rambling? Was I defensive without knowing it? That was the first month. The second month was worse. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city. Beige carpet, thin walls, a balcony that overlooked a parking lot. I kept most of the furniture from the condo because she said she didn't want reminders. I didn't realize at the time that it made my place feel like a storage unit for a life she had outgrown. I worked remotely as a data analyst for a logistics firm. Numbers didn't care about narratives. They didn't soften their tone. They didn't reinterpret past conversations. They either balanced or they didn't. At night, though, the silence pressed in. I replayed arguments in my head. The night she accused me of being emotionally distant. The weekend she said I embarrassed her at a networking dinner because I disagreed with her boss. The afternoon she told me I lacked ambition because I turned down a management role that would have doubled my stress. Maybe she was right. That thought lingered longer than I liked. In the 3rd month, something shifted, not dramatically, subtly. I stopped checking her social media. For weeks I had been scanning photos, Lillian at rooftop bars, Lillian at charity events, Lillian smiling beside colleagues. The captions were curated, new beginnings, clarity, growth. She never mentioned me. That was the point. One Tuesday evening, I opened her profile out of habit. Then I closed it before it loaded. My hand hovered over the mouse for a moment. I felt something unfamiliar. Relief. Instead, I opened a spreadsheet I had been meaning to review. I started tracking my expenses, then my savings, then my investments. When we were married, she handled most of the outward-facing finances. I handled back-end modeling for work, but deferred at home. She liked control. I liked peace. Now, peace required structure. I built a 6-month financial projection, then a 12-month one. I cut unnecessary subscriptions, I negotiated my internet bill, I refinanced a small personal loan we had taken out for a renovation that never happened because she decided the market wasn't right. In the 4th month, my manager called me into a virtual meeting. "Daniel," he said, "we've noticed you've been taking on extra modeling requests off the clock." I braced myself. Maybe I had overstepped. He continued, "We're restructuring the forecasting team. There's a lead position opening." 6 months ago, I would have declined. Leadership meant visibility. Visibility meant scrutiny. Scrutiny meant risk. Now, I asked, what would it involve? We spoke for 30 minutes. When the call ended, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. I accepted the role the following week. It didn't double my salary, it didn't transform my life, but it required me to speak in meetings, to defend projections, to hold eye contact on camera when someone challenged my assumptions. The first time a senior executive interrupted me mid-sentence, I felt my chest tighten. I paused, looked at him, finished my point anyway. No apology. That night, I noticed something small. I slept through until morning. In the 5th month, I ran into Marcus, one of the friends who had quietly drifted. We crossed paths at a coffee shop near my office. He hesitated when he saw me, like I might break. "Hey man, how are you holding up?" The phrase irritated me more than it should have. "I'm good," I replied. He studied my face as if searching for cracks. "Lillian said you were having a hard time." I took a sip of coffee before answering. "We both were." He nodded slowly. "She's been intense lately." I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't need details. The fact that he volunteered it told me enough. That evening, I stood on my apartment balcony, watching headlights move through the lot below. I thought about the word she had used, lost. Was I? I looked around my small apartment. It was clean, organized, quiet. Maybe I wasn't lost. Maybe I had just been background noise in someone else's story. In the 6th month, the call came. Her name lit up on my screen for the first time since the divorce. I let it ring twice. Then I answered. Her voice was different, less certain. "Daniel," she said, "can we meet?" I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. "For what?" I asked. A pause. "I think we need to talk." Her tone wasn't superior. It wasn't pitying. It was careful. And for the first time in a long time, I realized something unsettling. She didn't sound like someone who believed I would never recover. She sounded like someone who wasn't sure she had.
We agreed to meet the following Thursday. Neutral ground, a quiet wine bar halfway between my apartment and the condo she kept. Early evening, public, but not loud. I arrived first, not to make a statement, just have it. I chose a table near the back wall where I could see the entrance. Old instinct. In our marriage, Lillian liked to control timing. Arriving late meant she set the emotional temperature. I wasn't interested in temperature anymore. I was interested in clarity. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Her posture was the same, straight, deliberate, but something in her expression had softened. Not vulnerability exactly, more like calculation under strain. She saw me and hesitated for half a second before walking over. "Hi," she said. "Hi." No hug, no handshake, just two people sitting down across from each other. She ordered sparkling water. I stuck with coffee. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't hostile, it was unfamiliar. "You look different," she said finally. "So do you." A faint smile. It didn't reach her eyes. "How have you been?" she asked. The question felt loaded. 6 months ago, I would have rushed to reassure her, to prove I wasn't unraveling. "I've been working," I said, "settling into the new place." "That's good," she replied quickly. "I was worried you might isolate." There it was, the narrative thread. "I've actually been leading a new team," I said calmly. "It's been busy." Her fingers paused around her glass, a micro-reaction, barely visible, but I noticed. "Oh," she said. "I didn't realize. I didn't advertise it." She nodded slowly, processing. The waiter dropped off our drinks and left. Lillian took a breath. "I wanted to meet because I think we left things unfinished." I leaned back slightly. "In what sense?" She looked down at the table before answering. "I was hard on you." The words sounded rehearsed. "You said I wouldn't recover," I reminded her. Her jaw tightened just a bit. "That I believed at the time." That I was incapable? That you depended on me more than you understood. The statement was almost clinical. And now? I asked. She hesitated. Now I'm not sure that was accurate. The admission was small, but it shifted the room. I studied her face carefully. There were faint lines near her eyes I didn't remember. Fatigue, maybe. How are things? I asked finally. With me? Yes. She exhaled slowly. Busy. The promotion came through. Director of Communications. I nodded. Congratulations. Thank you. She paused. It's a lot of responsibility. I'm sure. Another silence. I assumed you'd struggle more, she said quietly. That one landed harder than the earlier insult. Why? I asked. She met my eyes. Because you avoided conflict. You deferred decisions. You let me lead. I considered that. I let you lead because you wanted to, not because I couldn't. Her eyes flickered. That's not how it felt. Then why didn't you ask me to step up differently? I asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I thought pushing you would create resentment. So instead, you created distance. Her fingers tightened around her glass again. I was carrying too much, she insisted, though her tone lacked its old force. Or maybe you believed you were, I replied. She didn't answer. The noise of the bar filled the space between us. Soft music, low conversations, glassware clinking. I've been thinking, she said finally, about how we handled everything. Go on. I may have framed things unfairly. That was new. In what way? With friends, with colleagues, I might have exaggerated your instability. The word hung there. I didn't react immediately. I just let it sit. Why? I asked. Her shoulders dropped slightly. Because it justified the decision. If you were lost, then leaving was necessary. Strategic. Strategic. So it was branding, I said quietly. She winced, not dramatically, just enough. That sounds harsher than I mean it. It sounds accurate. She looked at me differently then, not superior, not corrective, evaluating. I didn't expect you to rebuild this quickly. Rebuild what? Your confidence. I held her gaze. You weren't my source of it. A long pause followed. For the first time that evening, she looked uncertain. There have been complications, she said slowly. With work? Yes, and with people. I didn't press. Instead, I waited. It forced her to continue. Leadership is different than messaging. You can't spin internal fractures. And some of the things I said about you, they're being repeated back to me. That caught my attention. In what context? In meetings, she admitted. Questions about my judgment, my temperament. Interesting. When you shape a narrative, it can shape you back, I said carefully. She looked down again. I didn't think it would boomerang. I studied her posture, slightly forward now, less composed. What do you want from this meeting? I asked. She hesitated longer this time. I wanted to see if you were okay. And if I wasn't? I don't know. I let that hang. And if I am? I asked. Her eyes lifted slowly. Then maybe I miscalculated. There it was, not an apology, an assessment. She wasn't asking for reconciliation. She was recalibrating her understanding of me. 6 months ago, she believed I would collapse without her framework. Now she wasn't sure. I'm not here to prove anything. I'm just living. She nodded. And you're doing well. It wasn't praise. It was reluctant recognition. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said something unexpected. You underestimated my silence. I almost smiled. It wasn't silence. It was space. She leaned back in her chair, absorbing that. Outside the window, traffic lights changed from red to green. We sat there a few minutes longer, not arguing, not reconciling, just adjusting to a new balance neither of us had predicted. When the check arrived, she reached for it out of habit. I gently placed my card down first. No, I said calmly. I've got this. She didn't protest. That small gesture wasn't about money, it was about gravity. And for the first time since the divorce, I felt the axis tilt slightly in my direction.
After the check cleared and we stepped outside, the air felt cooler than it had an hour earlier. We stood on the sidewalk facing opposite directions. Her car was parked to the left, mine to the right. "This doesn't have to be the last conversation," she said. "It doesn't have to be the first of many, either," I replied. She gave a small nod, not offended, just registering. "I'm not trying to undo the divorce," she added quickly. "I didn't assume you were." That seemed to relieve her slightly. "I just needed to see you in person," she said, "to understand what I might have misread." "About me?" "About us. About myself." That was the first time she had included herself in the equation. We said goodnight without touching. As I walked to my car, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clear. Clarity is quieter than victory. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, not restless, focused. At work, I led a forecasting review with 3 department heads. One of them, Carla, had a habit of challenging every projection with subtle skepticism. Halfway through my presentation, she interrupted. "Daniel, your confidence interval seems optimistic." 6 months ago, that comment would have echoed in my head all night. I would have wondered if I sounded foolish. Instead, I zoomed in on the slide. "It's based on revised shipping data from Q2, I said evenly. "If you prefer a more conservative model, I can walk you through that scenario as well." Carla studied the numbers, then she nodded. "Continue." No drama, no ego, just equilibrium. Later that afternoon, Marcus texted me. "Hey, random question. Are you free Friday?" I hesitated before responding. "For what?" "Dinner, a few of us, nothing heavy." A few of us. 6 months ago, that phrase would have felt like a test. Now it felt like an invitation. "Sure," I replied. That night, I thought about something Lillian had said. "I underestimated your silence." I replayed our marriage in fragments, the dinners where she dominated conversation, the vacations where she chose itineraries, the arguments where she escalated and I de-escalated. At the time, I believed I was preserving peace. Now, I wondered if I had been avoiding definition. There's a difference. On Friday, dinner was surprisingly normal. No one treated me like a fragile object. Conversation drifted from work to travel to a mutual friend's engagement. At one point, Marcus leaned in slightly. "So you and Lillian talked?" The question was casual, too casual. "We met," I said. "And?" "And we're divorced." He exhaled softly, as if relieved I wasn't unraveling. "She's been under pressure, big expectations at work." I imagined so. He studied me carefully. "You don't seem angry." "I'm not." "Not even a little?" I considered that. I was, I admitted, but anger is loud. I needed quiet. He nodded slowly, perhaps understanding more than he let on. 2 days later, Lillian called again. This time, I didn't hesitate before answering. "Hi," she said. Her tone was measured. "Hi. I've been thinking about what you said, about space." "And?" "I don't think I gave you any." "That's true." She let out a soft breath. "I was afraid if I didn't lead, everything would stall." "So you accelerated?" "Yes." "At my expense?" Another pause. "Yes." The admission wasn't defensive, it was factual. "I didn't know how to share power," she said quietly. "I only knew how to hold it." That was the most honest sentence she had spoken since the divorce. "What's happening at work?" I asked. She hesitated. "There's been pushback about my leadership style." "Too direct?" "Too controlling." The irony didn't need to be spoken. "And they're using my own language against me, words like unstable,
reactive, the words she had once assigned to me. "I'm not glad you're experiencing that," I said carefully, "but I'm not surprised. You know." Her voice carried something new, not superiority, not correction, humility. "I thought strength meant dominance. I'm starting to realize it might mean steadiness." "That's closer," I replied. We stayed on the phone longer than expected, not reminiscing, not negotiating reconciliation, just recalibrating perception. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment with the lights off. The room felt different than it had months ago, not larger, not more decorated, just inhabited. For the first time, I wondered whether Lillian's prediction had been less about me and more about projection. "You'll never recover." What if she needed that to be true? Because if I didn't collapse, then leaving wasn't an act of rescue. It was a choice, and choices carry weight. The following week, my manager informed me the forecasting team's results had exceeded expectations. Our projections were now the standard for quarterly planning. There was no applause, just acknowledgement. Still, I felt something settle inside me. That evening, Lillian sent a brief message. "I heard about your promotion. Congratulations." I hadn't told her. "I assume Marcus mentioned it," I replied. "Yes." There was a pause before her next message. "I'm proud of you." I stared at the screen for a long moment. 6 months ago, that sentence would have meant everything. Now, it meant something different. Recognition, not validation. And the difference mattered.
2 weeks after our second call, Lillian asked to meet again. This time she suggested a quieter place, a small park near the river, where we used to walk on Sunday mornings before everything became strategic. I arrived a few minutes late on purpose, not to send a message, just to test myself. When I saw her sitting on the bench, hands folded in her lap, I noticed something subtle. She wasn't scanning the path for me. She wasn't checking her phone. She was waiting. There's a difference. "Hey," I said as I approached. "Hey." We sat side by side, not facing each other. The river moved steadily in front of us. No dramatic sunset, just gray water under an overcast sky. "I've been thinking about power," she began. "That's a new topic for us," I replied. A faint smile. "I think I confused control with stability," she said. "When you didn't push back, I assumed you couldn't. And when you pushed forward, I assumed you needed to," I said. She looked at me. "That wasn't fair." "No," I agreed. "It wasn't." A jogger passed. Leaves shifted in the wind. Ordinary sounds. "I've been asked to attend executive coaching," she said quietly. "Mandatory?" "Yes." I didn't comment. I just waited. "They said my communication style creates compliance, not loyalty." That line stayed between us. Compliance, not loyalty. "I used to think loyalty was automatic," she added, "that if I made the right decisions, people would just follow. And now? Now I'm realizing people follow when they feel seen." She glanced at me as she said it. I let the silence stretch. One of the psychological patterns in our marriage had been immediate correction. If she spoke, I responded. If she asserted, I countered or conceded. Now I didn't fill space automatically. It unsettled her slightly. I could see it in the way her fingers interlocked tighter. "Do you hate me?" she asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. "No," I said honestly. "Why not?" "Because hate requires attachment." "Because I don't need to," I replied. She absorbed that slowly. "I think I expected you to fight harder during the divorce," she admitted.
to argue, to defend yourself. I was tired, not defeated, just tired. She nodded. Your exhaustion I interpreted as weakness. That's common, I said. Another long pause. I'm not asking to get back together, she said carefully. I need you to know that. I know. I'm trying to understand what I misread. You misread my quiet as dependency. It was independence. You just didn't see it because it wasn't loud. She swallowed slightly. I told people you were unstable, she said. I thought it protected me. From what? From looking like the one who walked away too fast. There it was. Not cruelty, self-preservation. You wanted a cleaner story, I said. Yes, and I was the loose end. Her eyes glistened faintly, but she didn't cry. I didn't expect the story to evolve without me, she admitted. Stories always do, especially when they're built on half-truths. She leaned back against the bench. My coaching sessions are uncomfortable. They ask questions I don't like. Such as, why do you equate control with safety? I didn't answer. It wasn't my question to solve. The river kept moving. Do you feel stronger now? She asked. I thought about that. I feel aligned, I said. With what? With myself. She nodded slowly. I used to think you needed me to translate you, she said. I needed you to listen. That one hit. Her shoulders dropped. I didn't. No. The honesty wasn't cruel. It was clean. A couple walked past us holding hands. We both watched them for a moment. I don't regret the divorce, she finally said. I don't either. That surprised her. You don't? No. Why? Because it forced definition, I said, for both of us. She looked down at her hands. I'm not sure I like the definition I'm seeing, she admitted. You can change it, I said. She laughed softly, not amused, more self-aware. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's quiet. We sat there a while longer, no promises, no nostalgia. Before standing, she said something that shifted the tone. I told someone recently that you were the most stable person I knew. I turned to look at her. That's new. It's accurate. There was no performance in her voice, just recalibration. As we stood to leave, she hesitated. Thank you, she said. For what? For not collapsing. I almost smiled. I never planned to. She walked toward the parking lot. I stayed by the river a moment longer. 6 months ago, she believed I wouldn't recover. Now she was revising her thesis. Not because I fought her, because I didn't.
3 months after our second meeting, Lillian stopped calling. Not abruptly, gradually. The messages became shorter. The pauses between them grew longer. Eventually, they stopped altogether. I didn't chase the silence. I didn't interpret it as rejection. I understood it. She had gathered what she needed from our conversations. Not reconciliation, not closure, recalibration. Around that time, my team at work was assigned a high-stakes project, a national client, tight deadlines, internal politics. The old version of me would have deferred decisions upward to avoid friction. This time, I didn't. When 2 senior analysts disagreed in a meeting, I let them speak. I didn't rush to smooth tension. I didn't apologize for discomfort. I listened. Then I said, calmly, we'll move forward with the more conservative model for now. We can adjust once we have additional data. No theatrics, no dominance, just steadiness. After the call ended, one of the analysts sent me a private message. Thanks for handling that the way you did. It felt clear. Clear. Not impressive, not forceful. Clear. I started noticing how often clarity had been absent in my marriage, not because I lacked it, because I withheld it. There's a difference between peacekeeping and disappearing. I had done both. One evening, Marcus invited me to a small gathering at his apartment. I went without overthinking it. Halfway through the night, someone mentioned Lillian's name casually. "She's been quieter lately," a mutual acquaintance said. "Less intense." I didn't react. "She seems different," Marcus added. "More reflective." I sipped my drink and said nothing. The absence of commentary was deliberate. Months ago, I would have defended myself, corrected the narrative, explained context. Now, I didn't need to. Stories shift when you stop feeding them. A week later, I received an email from Lillian. Subject line, update. Short, direct. "I've accepted a lateral move within the company. Smaller team, less external pressure. It feels healthier." No blame, no self-congratulation, just information. I stared at the screen for a moment before replying, "I hope it brings you stability." I chose that word intentionally. She responded an hour later, "It already is." There was something unspoken in that exchange. Recognition. She no longer needed me to be the unstable one in order to feel solid, and I no longer needed her to admit fault in order to feel whole. A few days after that, I ran into her unexpectedly at a bookstore downtown. We both reached for the same aisle. There was a brief moment of awkward proximity, then we both stepped back slightly. "You first," she said. "No, go ahead." She smiled faintly. "You look good," she said. "So do you." It wasn't flirtation, it wasn't regret, it was acknowledgement. We stood there a moment longer than necessary. "I've been thinking about something," she said. "About what?" "About that day in the parking lot, when I told you you'd never recover." I remembered it clearly, the certainty in her voice, the finality. I said it because I believed recovery required me. And now? Now I see recovery required distance. There was no drama in her tone, just clarity. I needed to lose the control to understand it wasn't strength. And I needed to lose the marriage to understand I wasn't weak. We held eye contact for a few seconds. No hostility, no longing, just two people recognizing the pattern that once bound them. "I don't regret leaving," she said quietly. "I don't regret staying," I replied. She frowned slightly. "Staying?" "With myself." That one settled between us. She nodded slowly. "You misjudged me." I misjudged myself. The admission surprised even me. For years, I had interpreted my calm as inadequacy, my silence as deficiency. But silence can be strategic. Calm can be strength. It just doesn't advertise itself. We didn't exchange numbers again. We didn't promise to stay in touch. We simply returned to separate aisles. As I walked toward the register, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not validation, not revenge, relief. 6 months after she predicted my collapse, I wasn't thriving in some cinematic, exaggerated way. I hadn't built an empire. I hadn't reinvented myself into someone unrecognizable. I had done something smaller. I had defined myself without opposition. That's a quieter kind of power. Later that night, standing on my balcony, I thought about the words she used that day in the driveway. "You'll never recover." She wasn't trying to curse me. She was trying to reassure herself. Recovery for her meant dominance. Recovery for me meant alignment. The difference mattered. I didn't need her to regret. I didn't need her to return. I didn't need her to declare me stable in front of the same friends who once questioned it. I needed something simpler. I needed to know that when someone walked away believing I would break, they were wrong. Not because I fought, not because I begged.
but because I stayed steady. And sometimes, steady is the loudest comeback of all.